So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. We're just discussing, I think we've got 4 time zones here. I tried to mention them when I was advertising it today, but I got all the time zones confused, so that didn't help. But it's great to see so many people in the chat. So today I'm definitely going to focus on the chat, so I'll hide myself and I'll just drop in every now and then to repeat any questions anybody has in the chat. So if anyone's there today that wants to ask questions, we've got Todd from Sweet Tea joining us. If anyone wants to ask Todd questions or anyone questions, if you put it in the chat, and sometimes it was suggested last time that putting the questions in capital letters might help them stand out, but hopefully I'll be keeping an eye on it. And I just wanted to mention that after last week, when we talked about the Guitar Builders Collective Forum, I've just set up a new page on there, which has got recommendations for around the world of different suppliers and places to buy things. So it'd be great to share on there. I thought that was a good suggestion that someone had last week. Great. If you don't mind, I'm going to hide myself and I'm going to monitor the chat. So
go for it. Thanks, Daniel. All right, so we've got Todd with us, this evening for me. So I think, Todd, at first I was going to ask you about background of guitar building and woodwork and how you got started and, where did it all start for you?
Well, I was a guitar player have been a guitar player for about 35 years. I played in bands. I was a drummer to start with.
Where did you start? What age?
6.
I started tobacco and guitar the same day when I was 13.
Nice. That's around the same time I started playing guitar, when I was about 12, 13 years old.
Yeah, I think I was about 13 as well, I reckon, for guitar.
It's probably everybody's story.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you're a drummer, it kind of gets boring playing other people's songs. It's really hard to write a melodic tune on the drum. So to facilitate some kind of songwriting, I had to learn an instrument. As far as building goes, YouTube, I got bit. Scott's was one of the first videos I saw. And man, I'm telling you, ever since then, I have been like, it's my life at this point, I love it.
So the skills, the woodworking skills and those creative skills, were they sort of somewhere in the background or other hobbies or things along the way?
Well, I've done a bunch of carpentry work, so I had kind of some of the tools, but I've done nothing but buy tools and wood for the past 3 years. My wife's like, please stop. But yeah, I've always been a tinkerer. I think that's something we all share with each other. We like to tinker with things, and
it's a DIY mentality.
Yeah, it is. I don't like to ask anyone for help for anything. I'll do it myself. And with the internet, there's no reason why you can't learn to do anything. So that's kind of the philosophy I took, and video after video. I actually studied for an entire year. I read books. I watched a bunch of videos before I would allow myself to touch a piece of wood. And that was so advantageous for me,
I know when I
ruining things.
My early days of playing the guitar, I think I was a bit like that as well. You sort of start asking yourself, I wonder how this works. And you see some screws on a guitar and you think, what happens if I just take that screw out and see what happens? So I remember early on, pulling apart my first guitar, just like, I wonder what magic's inside here.
More than once I've thought about the fact that as a player, I didn't understand anything about the actual guitar. It's amazing how many players have no clue of the anatomy or how it works or anything.
I agree 100% with that, man. It's when I was just like you, Aaron, taking things apart. It's when I was able to start putting things back together that it got really the aha moment,
Yeah.
And Scott, you're so right, man. I mean, I never thought about building a guitar. I've done plenty of upgrades, Floyd Rose, replacing necks, fretwork, stuff like that. But as far as scratch building,
as a player, I didn't even think about, having to do anything beyond tune the damn thing. I didn't know it needed intonation.
Yeah.
Mm.
Luckily, Todd, didn't go messing with things, but.
Yeah. Todd, you jumped straight into scratch build, or did you have any experience with kit guitars or anything like that first?
I did a few kits, but not, I had never carved a neck. I did some refinishing work because I'm an auto paint guy, or I am now. But no, it's mainly just upgrades and repairs. Built a couple of kit guitars. My first actual build was on YouTube. It's for the second Great Guitar Build Off. Was my first scratch build, and I tried to make it as complicated as possible.
There's probably a lot of I think with the competition, and you mentioned that it was the YouTube that got you in as well. I think there's a lot of people that it has encouraged people to jump in and have a scratch build, for the first thing they've done.
Big unit.
Yeah. Scratch building just seemed to be the way. I didn't want to do a kit,
Yeah.
I wanted to jump in with both feet, and if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. You learn through mistakes, and I've made plenty. So
I think I've mentioned that I both Scott as well, cigar box guitar stuff to kind of understand the mechanics of how it works. But when I was sort of thinking about my first scratch build and whether I should do a kit, in my head it was like, well, I'm just going to screw, attach all the screws, maybe put a color on it. What am I actually doing? And I hadn't thought about modifying and carving and making adjustments. So for me, something, and I think the reason why I built my first one, which was the Brian May Red Special inspired one, it was like, well, I actually want to build something that is different than what you can buy as a kit.
Yeah, I agree. That's become my thing now. We built the Strat. I did that collaboration with Geo where we built the Strat. But I've gotten to the point now to where I really don't want to repeat that. I don't want to build someone else's design. I love the creation part of this thing. That's what really does it for me, is raw wood, turning that into something that can make music. Yeah.
Exactly.
I know you've mentioned that you've been a collector of different woods and things, and we've certainly noticed that on your videos and your Instagram. I've often wondered this: if you used all the wood that you've currently got, how many guitars do you think you could make with it, excluding like hardware electronics? How many do you think you'd have in your stash?
Well, I got 73 top sets, if that counts for anything. Man, I can't quit buying wood. It's like an addiction, Yeah. I think I've got so much wood in my shop that it's a problem.
Yep.
I get wood in my shop pretty regular.
What about you, Scott? How many do you reckon you could make for the majority of your guitar based on the wood that you've got?
Oh, wow. I hadn't thought about it. Because it's kind of surprising how much I don't think about it, but I do have quite a bit laying around. Problem is, for me, it was all about the combinations. The wood it usually was what inspired a build. So not that many at the moment. Actual top sets, I have one at the moment.
Oh, we got to change that.
Curly redwood. A lot of times, most of the material I could get a hold of was like 7/8 thick or 15/16, whatever. So for the longest time, I just sandwiched two of those pieces together, which was great for carving. Top sets was kind of trouble because I really like to carve. I hate just a flat top, which is one of my complaints about the telly. But top sets are awesome, but I would have to carve through them most of the time,
Hey, I agree with you, man. That's what led me into the whole bevel world, you know.
Yeah.
I do bevels on almost every guitar because of that very reason. I don't like the look of a slab.
Yeah.
You know?
There's no art to it. There's no, there has to be some organicness.
Curves and shapes and flow.
Yeah.
What were you going to say? One of the what?
I was just going to go off on a tangent of, especially some of the early ones, because most of what I did early on was tunematic. Just the violin carve, the a little bit of a tilt to the neck, all of that just made it a piece of art. You know, a beautiful thing to look at. I couldn't picture doing something, you know, some Fender style.
Yeah.
The carves that you sort of do, Todd, how much is like planned that you've got it sort of mapped out where you want it to be, and how much is once you sort of start at it and it forms its own shape and, you know, it just feels right?
I've just now gotten into the point where I plan anything.
Yep.
You know, and I've only done that because of time.
Okay.
But even that, I'm like Scott. I let the wood speak to me. That's why I've got so much wood, because I knew I could look at a certain top set or a certain neck blank or whatever and become inspired by that to make whatever it is that I plan on making. But I don't know, man. It's taken me over, you know.
Are you like me, where you have, you know, you're supposed to build something, you have no idea, and you're worried about the fact that you have no idea, and then something clicks, and then it just keeps rolling?
Absolutely. It's art, man. It's just like you said, it's art as much as it is anything. You know, I love the technical aspect of it, but what it really is for me is creating something from a pile of material. You know, I love watching that come together. There's no better feeling to me than starting a new build and finishing a new build. All that stuff in between, I'm in the zone at that point, you know. Time doesn't matter.
Yep.
None of that matters.
Just escape the world. It all melts away.
Yeah.
And then when you're done with it, I just stare at each one in just absolute amazement that I did that.
Oh, yeah.
Every time.
Oh, yeah. I love experimenting, you know, and I'll do it on a live build. Gio gives me crap about that all the time. He's like, you should do some test. I don't test. You know,
I do.
I just do.
I reckon I'm probably the opposite. I kind of like to, I like a good test sometimes. I've got, I know a few of my last ones, I've got, you know, some chunks of pine that I've just mocked up a body and cut it to the shape and then hacked into that a little bit. But I think I'm probably a bit different, that, you know, I've got a bit of a stash of fretboards and, you know, a few neck blank kind of things. But the tops I really sort of bought when I've had a guitar in mind to sort of do it. So, mine's a little bit different, that sort of process, that I'll have a top that I know is what I want for the guitar. And then I'm kind of reluctant to kind of go too far into it, because I've kind of got something in mind for that one. And if I go too far, then I know I've got to then get online and find another one.
Right.
Speaking of tests, the first time I tried multi-scale, I did three builds in a row out of Home Depot pine 2x4s.
Yeah, I've seen some of your mock-up stuff on, you know, you did some of that in the beginning of the series, or your first multi-scale that you did on YouTube. I watched some of that mock-up stuff with that Home Depot lumber.
Those guitars turned out awesome.
Yeah.
I had a friend of mine actually bought one or two of them.
Killer. I mean, go ahead, Aaron. I'm sorry, brother.
No, you're right. I'm just saying, I've been browsing the comments to see if there's questions and things. So, and I can see Daniel typing away in some places, but maybe, Daniel, if there's any questions that people have, if you don't mind pinning them on the screen, and then we can sort of see them there and ask away that way. I did see there was one from Corey, asked me where my beard had gone to. And probably since I knew Todd was coming on, I thought if we've all got a beard, it's just going to be too much beard on screen. So that's why it's gone. Only reason.
Yeah, I'll definitely pin some questions when they come, but at the moment it's more just enjoying your chat and people commenting along with what you've been saying about like how many parts of guitars they have lying around and wood collection, etc.
Yeah, it's one thing I've sort of been curious about. When you see the size of someone's workshop or shed, whether it's a small space or whether it's like a big industrial area. And I know watching the Great Guitar Build Off and all the people that we follow, that there's a massive range of people building on their kitchen table, and then people in a garage size space. And I've always been curious about how much room and supplies and things they've got.
13 by 20. That's the size of my shop.
Meters or feet?
Well, no, that's feet. You know where I'm at, man.
I'm assuming you put feet.
Meters? Oh, I would love that.
Oh, Arran's just dropped out. Hopefully he'll join us back. I've got to say, I'm very envious when I see American people's workshops, even their garages. In the UK, everyone seems to have tiny, tiny spaces. I think it's just the nature of our houses generally being smaller. I think.
Well, my shop's not large. Scott doesn't seem to have a really large shop either.
It's pretty good size. It's just crammed full of junk. I don't have much room, but
might be your camera angles.
I've gotten real used to a relatively small area. Everything, all the other room is storage.
Oh yeah. Well, you only need so much room to as long as I can walk to the next tool, that's really all you need. But I'm also amazed at how much killer work is being done in such small areas with such a limited tool set. Man, the one thing I am so fortunate to have is if I see a tool that I want, especially something that's less than $100, I buy it. My wife's not too happy about that, but I need that rasp. I need that plane. I can't live without these tools. There's so many things that I've heard so many of you guys, all three of you actually, talk about the right tool for the job. If you don't have the right tool, certain things take so much longer. It's like trying to carve a neck without a shinto. What? Why would you do that?
My neck carving tool of choice has changed. It's shifted over time. And for a while, the stupid microplane, a quarter round microplane was like $5 at Walmart, was like the number one go-to thing. What I have now, my main tool, I don't even know what the hell it is. I don't think it's a Ferris rasp, but I don't know. It's got curved blades, teeth, and it's crazy.
Is that big half round one, Scott, you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can really dig in and really peel off some material, but if you go easy, it's a pretty smooth cut. I don't know what that thing is. It was I don't know, dropped by aliens or something. But if I ever look at that thing, I may have to give up. I don't know if I can go back to carving like a mere mortal again.
So
I found that.
Oh, sorry, I interrupted.
Oh, go ahead, man.
Bill was asking what everyone's introduction to the community was. I know Todd mentioned earlier his first videos he saw were Scott's. I think that's what you said. I know mine were also Great Guitar Build-Off related. It was Chris from King Bespoke. He came up on my feed, and then I sort of discovered Crimson through him and what was going on.
Yeah, I think for me, I probably if we're talking about the community actually commenting and chatting and doing all that kind of stuff, interacting with other guitar builders, for me it was definitely the first Great Guitar Build-Off. Probably, how many years? 3 or 4 years before that was when I started watching a lot of YouTube videos, of guitar builders, whether they're, ones that we know in the community or other ones as well, just to learn how to do it. and it was probably the first unofficial great guitar build off that build along one. That's probably where my first experience was. A lot of the guys are probably in the chat now. Or Scott, were you in that one, the unofficial build along?
Oh yeah,
that one. I think probably all you guys in that one. I was just watching and not commenting because up until then I'd watched YouTube videos, but I never even thought about you actually type a comment and the creator would put something back. So when I first started the build off myself and started getting comments from people, it was like, oh man, that was really cool, and that really surprised me how much enjoyment I got out of that, just chatting to people. So definitely for me, that was my sort of introduction to it.
I feel a little goofy when people ask, where did you learn all this? And I got to say, YouTube. That's it. That's the whole answer. YouTube.
Of course.
When I started, I found Crimson, but there weren't that many, consistent. There were several builds online where, it was a one-time deal. And this was my first build and it turned out awesome. And it was the fact that there were so few to watch and, those bullshit, it turned out awesome people that made me think I need to make videos.
One of the first ones I watched was actually, it's an Australian guy, Fletcher's Handmade Guitars.
Yep.
And I know a lot of people that I spoke to seen him as well, and they're about 10 or 12 years old. They're probably some of the first ones, but I think he's basically done, I think he did Les Paul Juniors and Strats and Tallys with, his own sort of take on it. But I remember at the time for the amount of detail and the clarity of the camera shots and the explanation, it was just spot on. I think, there's been a lot of people doing guitar making videos since then. And I think if there's a specific task that I think, how am I going to do that? I have gone back to his videos on occasion to watch those.
Well, it's funny. A lot of those guys, it wasn't necessarily so much about information, but inspiration for sure. And Fletcher was awesome to watch just because he was so meticulous and systematic. And, it really made you think about tools and how, put process in your mind and how to do things.
I agree with that. I've always felt like his Strat series, even though he was building a Strat, is his method, his teaching method. I learned so much from watching him. So good mention there, Aaron, definitely. Yeah,
my first, the Brian May inspired one that I did is basically, a Strat construction with the different shape and the different pickups and switches, that kind of stuff. But that pretty much that build was watching his Strat or Telly, series, and each video. So all right, I'm going to watch this one, and then I'd finish that part of the build, and then I'd just watch the next video multiple times. I found that super helpful.
But 8 or 9 years ago, there was Crimson, Fletcher, Sully.
Yeah, and probably Crimson as well. I think when I first started watching Crimson, I think it was when he sort of moved into the barn, sort of out of his shed, and then I discovered the early ones in his backyard shed, basically. But it was the early stages. I sort of started watching Crimson Guitars when it was really just sort of starting it off in the barn location.
I think the first one I saw was the 24-hour build, and many times I've gone back and just watched it over again.
Yeah, it was probably those ones for me. Yeah, the live, so to speak, ones where you could see every second of the process, and as a beginner, it was really good because there was the problem. I shouldn't say the problem, but with other videos where we you edit bits out and you show the bits that you think people want to watch or whatever, then there's a lot of process stuff that you can't see. But certainly been 9 hours or 12 hours or 18, whatever those series that he did, every step of the way you could see it. And if you had the patience to sit through and watch, you could learn a lot. Yeah.
Well, he really romanticized the love of the plane and woodworking in general and some of those things that, I think a lot of people have attached to.
Oh, I agree with that. And I honestly like that Crimson phase. That's the era that I really enjoy watching. It's gotten into a point now, I'm not criticizing, but I find the daily guitar draw, that really doesn't hold any appeal for me. I want to see, I want to see things that I think could further what I do in the shop. It's not so much about, I don't want to be Crimson, I have no desire to build more than 2 or 3 guitars at a time. I want to be me, So
yeah.
Daniel's asked what made all of us want to make videos.
Yeah, first, Todd.
Well, knowing that you two led me here, at first I was really apprehensive about getting on YouTube and starting a channel and all that stuff. But man, now I absolutely have as much fun making the videos. Well, I won't say as much fun, but it's become an integral part of my guitar building process. I don't know how I would fare in my shop without the camera on. It makes me pay a little bit closer attention, I think, to, it's also sometimes interruptive, but I enjoy making the videos. So that's what it is. It's becoming a part of my process.
Your video making process, do you film a lot of what, do you film like a whole process and then later on work out what you want to show, or how do you go about that?
Film it all.
Yep.
Film it all. Yeah. I mean, for the last montage, which wound up being right at 6 minutes. Yep. I had 168 gigabytes of video footage for that. It was a nightmare.
Yep.
See, I've gotten to where I think, all right, this needs to be recorded. And I know I miss a lot of things, especially when I think, all right, I need to go build me a little jig or something. And later I think I really should have recorded that.
That's what led me to want to record everything. I understand how much more time saving it would be for me to only film the parts that I knew needed to make it to the video. Yep. But that adds another layer of pressure or thought on me to work out what I think that is, So I just keep the camera rolling.
Yep. Yeah.
I think I'm guilty after the fact. That's all.
Yeah. I understand. I felt that way too many times in way too many situations.
The number of times on camera I've said, I've been a bad host, I cheated you, is just phenomenal.
Yeah. I think I've said before that since, I film on my phone and early on, the phone storage runs out really quick and I was having difficulty transferring it to laptop and things. So I sort of early on got into the habit of only filming short snippets because that's all I really could. So for me, most of the clips I film would be, 30 seconds to a minute, like a start, middle, end of a process. If I'm cutting out a body on the bandsaw, that I might let it run through, but glue up, I'll film the whole thing because I'm not stopping 2 or 3 times in between to change angles. Right. But probably 5 or 6 minutes, is the biggest chunk that I'll sort of film. And I reckon about 90% of the clips that I film would end up, making the videos. But I think for me, it's based on the fact that I just don't have the storage to record, 20 minutes or half an hour and then go back and do it later on. Actually would be cool to have at least one camera maybe rolling the whole time and then a second one just for those little, snippets of the close-ups.
Storage is a problem.
It is.
That's probably a good topic for another stream.
Definitely.
My OCD, I have saved every piece of footage since the beginning. I still have, which is ridiculous. But I've more than filled up a 2 terabyte drive.
Yeah, I've got 3 2 terabyte drives just to deal with the sheer volume. But another thing I wanted to mention is another thing that led me to want to make these videos. My wife bought me a Canon M6 Mark II camera for Christmas, and it's such a nice camera, and I'm not really a photographer. So I had the camera there. I might as well make videos. And that's become such a workhorse camera, man. I cannot say enough good things about that Canon. Such a great camera.
I really need to upgrade my video and my audio. So I might have to look into that one of these days.
A few times I've thought about the good camera, and then I kind of, look around and I'll price one, and then I look at the price and think, I could spend that on a camera, or I could buy more stuff for the guitar or tools. And it's whenever I think, is it a camera or is it more tools and wood? It's like, why am I buying a new camera? So one day.
Why fix it? But yeah.
I bought, have you guys seen those, it's a little Zoom Q2N 4K camera. It's got the built-in stereo mics on top of it. Yeah. Really affordable. I bought one of those for like a B-roll cam,
Yeah.
That might be something you want to look into, Scott. Those things are super great. I mean, they shoot 4K, and the audio from those things is so good.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that.
I use Zoom here for my audio. I think it's great. I just wanted to jump in because for ages I was looking at cameras because I used to use a DSLR, and it was a really old one, and it was really crap at focusing. And then I just find with my phone, it's so easy to just move it around when I'm working. And I've got these little tripods that just hang off of different bits in my workshop. And because the phone doesn't weigh much, I just plug it in, start filming, move it somewhere else, start filming. It's no effort at all.
It would drive me nuts to try to film with the phone.
Yeah, me too. Daniel, quick question. How do I get rid of this banner?
Oh, I'll get rid of it. Sorry. So under text, no, under chat, you can unpin it. So sorry.
That's all right. Your face is cut off here. Hold on. Oh yeah, there we go. Thank you.
We should probably read off that question.
Yeah, that question was about how much basically gets left on your cutting room floor of you when you're chatting, not just making as well.
90%. At least, and my videos are long usually. Tried to get it under control and make them below 30 minutes, but I still wind up with, oh my God, man, you guys wouldn't believe it.
I've said before that I quite often watch, particularly when there's lots of great guitar build-off videos, I quite often watch them in the background while I'm working in my shop. And I find particularly your voice is very calming to work to. So I don't mind that your videos are long if they're on in the background like that.
I would like to do that. I've started playing music in the shop, and I have to pause it every time I'm going to record, and that becomes a big pain in the ass. Wi-Fi in the shop sucks, or I would do some live stuff once in a while.
I can't listen to music while I'm building, man. I guess that's two different sides of my brain. It feels like it is, I got this push-pull thing going on. If I listen to music, I get hyper focused on that, and I'll literally forget what I'm doing, especially if it's some music I'm into,
Yeah, I'm the same as that. And I think, I've sort of thought of as well that, I don't know, whether it's being a guitar player as well, that, you listen to songs that have got good guitar parts, and I actually want to stop and listen to what the guitar's doing. And the idea of sort of background music has got a time and its place here, but for me, it's not while I'm trying to concentrate on something.
Yeah,
another thing, and I think you guys will agree with this. The internal jukebox is always going. There's music in the head.
Yep.
Sorry, Scott, I didn't mean to interrupt you, brother.
Yeah, there's a little delay. Now, for me, it's a whistle while you work kind of thing. And I'd love to listen, but so often I got to pause it so I can record. And I find myself going, well, I got to wait until the solo's over before I, pause.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, but that's more of a camera problem.
Yeah. It's a head thing with me.
Yeah.
You say OCD, mine's like massive ADHD, If I can't find focus in one thing, I'm screwed on everything.
Yeah.
Well, what really draws me to the shop is probably a little different than, if the shop helps you focus. I'm starting to wonder if that's the case.
Oh yeah, that's exactly what it is for me.
Focal
It's
point.
the only time I feel truly focused. Like you said, that's what it takes for me, is to be able. It's the first thing I found outside of playing music that gives me that focus, that nothing else matters outside of that. I love that feeling too.
You've got the creative outlet, you've got the sense of accomplishment, but it's something about just working in the shop that's magic. And I've thought all of this time that it was somewhere between the intersection of mindless, some tedious task that you get to just zone out on, versus things where you actually have to stop and focus, but you're focused on this thing and the rest of the world goes away. Somewhere between those things, the shop is just a magical outlet.
It is. I love that, man. It's so freeing. And like I said, nothing outside of playing in a band has ever given me that feeling. But at that point, you introduce more personalities into that mix, and that hardly ever works. Egos get in the way. I love the alone silence, at least mental silence that I get in the shop. I love that.
Yeah,
I'm reading through a few of the comments, and I think this is a topic that people are quite split. There's a lot of people saying that they need music and it's always a must, and then other people that are, we can't have it. And we've really got to concentrate. So that's quite interesting.
Well, I mean, I love making music, don't get me wrong, but that's a different thing. I don't want to do both things at the same time. I build guitars to make music,
Yep.
That's pretty much what it is. I can't do both, though, at the same time anyway.
Well, Daniel's got a question, and it actually kind of segues into our topics.
Yeah. The question that, how does Todd's day job and knowledge of paint cross over to guitar building?
Well, if you're painting a guitar, which I've actually yet to do other than clear coat, I would say it's a huge benefit. I have access to a ton of product as far as auto painting products, and I've got some really killer color, but I can't bring myself to paint any of this wood that I've got, man. So it's one of those things. How much does that matter? I don't know, because I can't see myself spraying gray primer, or no matter how cool this pearl color is, I'm not going to spray that on a Buckeye burl top. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you want color, you get stain.
Yeah, you do. So that's kind of, and I did not think I would be that way in the beginning. I thought, oh man, I've got all these ideas for these creative paint jobs or whatever. But that has completely left me. I don't mind using auto paint for a little accent here and there, whatever. And I absolutely love using urethane clear as a finish. Outside of that, though, I don't really have that much desire to paint a guitar anymore.
What about the finishing process then? Because I've noticed, some of your, was it the strap one maybe, that the shine that you got on the finish, seeing it through a phone screen, it seemed unbelievable how shiny and clear it was. So is that the finishing process? Is that a sort of good crossover?
As far as, as far as automotive finish, it is. If I want high gloss, I'm using automotive urethane. It's tough. I know how to spray it. It's the biggest issue. And you get a super high gloss shine. I've yet to use any polyester finish. Simtech sent me some products to try, but I don't know how I feel about poly, man. Like that activated 2K poly. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Every guitar I've ever had that had a polyester finish on it, I've always felt like I wanted to sand it off. It feels like plastic, and I don't like that. I don't know. It's a pet peeve thing, I guess.
Yeah.
Finish is still one of those things I have everything to learn.
Well, I'm, on the flip side of that, I knew nothing about oil-based finishes, woodworking, polyurethane, nitrocellulose lacquer. I knew nothing about any of those things when I got into this. It was all automotive paint. So you would think that there's a huge crossover between guitar building and that. And maybe there would be if I was like in a mass production situation or something like that. Mm-hmm. But I love a satin finish. I like a flat finish, and sometimes I want a gloss. And if I want a satin or a matte finish, I'm not going to use automotive paint for that. There's no need. I think oil gives you a way better grain definition than you could ever get spraying a finish.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, finishing, that's one area that I don't have a lot of experience in, from any woodworking I've done over the years. And probably if, I kind of think about what I've learned from YouTube and watching other people, and then what I could learn by having someone next to me explaining and showing. And I think finishing, if I do a course or, want to learn a skill, that's something that I would love to actually have that experience with someone else. Because I think, the woodwork, you can see how something's cut and shaped and attached and joined. But when you see the finish, the angle from different lights and the tactile feeling of it to know what it feels like, whether you've got to sand it or add more coats, like, I've watched videos on it and I can't, without seeing it in front of me and touching it, I find it really difficult.
I get that. I feel the same way, Aaron. It's a learning process for sure, but it absolutely necessary one to have a grasp on if you're going to do this. And man, I have to say, your guitars always turn out looking really killer, as do yours, Scott. So I don't think you're grasping too hard for an understanding of it.
You think about how many disciplines go into just building one guitar. There's an infinite pile of information to learn about finish, about electronics, about so many things.
I think for me, for the finishing, I've sort of gone with things that I'm, the first few were Danish oils. So, and then it was for last year's build-off one was a wipe-on poly that someone in Australia had put me onto. So it was going with things that that I knew were going to be a lower risk. So the wipe-on poly, as long as you do lots of really thin coats, you avoid all of that wet sanding and then getting too thick or streak marks and things. So it's that kind of stage of finishing and buffing that sort of scares me a bit. So I think I've just chosen products that I know I can put lots of really thin light layers on, and I know that I'm not going to have to troubleshoot and go back and work out what grit of sandpaper I need to go back to fix it.
Right, I understand that. Scott, you use a lot of wipe-on poly, don't you?
These days, quite a bit. Not usually for bodies, but sometimes, yeah. Early stuff was a lot of rattle can lacquer, and I was embarrassed to even have that on camera.
Yeah, I get it, man. It's hard, but that's back to my first scratch build. I went about it all wrong. I tried to throw way too much complicated process into that build. I built a Les Paul shaped guitar, but I put a Floyd Rose on it. I finished it with automotive urethane. I tried to use pearl with a black burst. I threw as many curveballs at myself as I could. Complete disaster. I will never play that guitar. It turned out looking really pretty, and it plays, but I know what hides inside that thing, and I can't bring myself to even say that's a guitar. You know what I mean? It's not.
Yeah. I think the first two builds on YouTube, they're garbage, absolute trash. But that was one of the things that drew me to actually want to make videos, is seeing all these people that, this is my one and only build, and it turned out great. And I'm thinking, the hell it did? You're a liar.
Oh, Yeah, I think honesty is the best policy in that. Sometimes, man, you know it. You know if you've built something worth its weight. You know, I want to say that out loud. I don't want to hide that from anyone, because the reward you give yourself, first and foremost, that's what has to matter. It goes along with that whole creation side of things. You know, the artist in you. I need that satisfaction in knowing that I have created something that was a vision of mine that actually functions the way it's meant to function. That's what I go after now.
But it seems to be real alluring to a whole lot of people to, tell the internet, I tried this once and, just like Lego Batman, first try.
Yeah. I doubt it. Knowing what we all know now, I doubt it.
Yeah,
Todd, you're also
garbage.
Yeah, Todd, you're also not afraid to sort of go back and sand off things as well. That was one of your recent ones. You weren't happy with the stain and the finish, and you went back to scratch and started again
3 times.
Yeah, yep.
I don't care about that, man. Again, it's what difference does that make? It's time. I'm not putting myself under that pressure, because I'm building for, first of all, me.
Yeah.
When you love something, that's part of it.
And I suppose that's part of the learning process, that for you to go back and do it 3 times on that guitar, if you don't do it like that, then it's like, all right, well, I'm going to wait till the next guitar I build to see if I'm going to make the same mistake, or am I going to know how to do it next time as well?
Which also gives validity to the fact that Geo pushes me to test things all the time. But, I would rather, I claim to be some kind of teacher on YouTube. I want to get as many people into this as I can. So I think it's way more beneficial to show my mistakes on that process while they're happening, and not wait for the next guitar to know that I'm probably going to have that same issue. I want to work out the solution to that problem right then, Yeah.
It's one of the reasons my channel is Bonehead.
Yeah, I get it, man. I do.
The early stuff, I had a Bonehead counter. Every time I'd make some stupid mistake, I'd do ding. And I'd keep track of how many Boneheads in that build,
I've got a few questions that just come in that I thought I'd interrupt you all to ask. First one was, what do you use as your grain filler?
Me?
Yeah, or I guess it's for Todd, but anyone.
It's according. If I'm looking for a high gloss finish, up to this point, I've made a proprietary sealer in a spray can that I actually use as a sealer and a grain filler, and then I sand that first. But if I'm going for a natural or a matte finish or a satin or whatever, I don't grain fill. I go straight to Osmo hard wax oil. I like that grain of the wood look. If I'm not going for gloss, one of the reasons I love that finish is because if you're using like Wingate or something like that, I don't want to fill that grain up. I like the way that looks through the oil,
Yeah, I love that sort of texture.
Yeah, me too.
You don't really get that in the YouTube videos and photos.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can feel it.
Yeah. Someone mentioned Z-epoxy.
Yeah, I've used that. I probably most that I've done, I haven't grain filled. The same thing. I like the open grain and using the Danish oil as well, which is going to soak in. That sort of worked fine. But yeah, the Z-epoxy, I think it was Ty. I think Ty was in the comments before. I might be watching that. He did a few videos using the Z-epoxy as a grain filler. So that's actually what I've used. And on a few other ones, I don't know what you've got it. Oh, you've got some here somewhere.
We've got Z-epoxy. I just haven't ran into the need to use it yet.
I had a bad experience. For just play grain fill, it'd probably be awesome. But one of these recent builds with the Cerusing ash, where you really pull a lot of material out of there, and I was trying to fill that, which is a lot of material, and that thick, it does kind of yellow. So But most of my nightmare was trying to get that down level without going through paint. So, it was a technical nightmare.
Yeah, I found some of the other ones I've used, which are it's just like a wood putty. It's probably the same.
I've got some of that stuff too.
Yeah, Timbermate. So I've seen other guitar builders, and it's more of a woodworking thing probably. But to water it down into a really fine sort of paste, and rubbing that, it's different mahogany and pine and hardwood. So I've used that a couple of times. That obviously just tried it to match the color, but that's using it on like a timber that's pretty consistent color across. If you've got fancy figuring, that's going to show up like anything. So I think a couple of the early ones, it was just a flat color. I use that for a grain fill.
Well, color's the trick there.
It is.
Geo just asked, have any of you used melamine as a filler? I hear he's a big fan.
Geo?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a huge fan of it. I've got some, but I haven't used it yet. And I think the reason he uses melamine is because he's not set up to spray a finish. And it's one of the good ways to get a really high gloss finish without having to have a spray set up. Even in a rattle can, you really kind of need to take precautions in your shop to make sure you don't end up coating everything in overspray. It's a concern for me, so I ordered some melamine, but I haven't used any yet. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but I've also, back to the grain filler thing, I've seen guys that take automotive glazing putty, like 2-part polyester putty, and mix color like epoxy dye or whatever kind of pigment dye you wanted to use into that. And that seems like a good option because, first of all, the stuff dries hard as a rock in 20 minutes. Secondly, it sands like butter. So I haven't tried that yet, and knowing that I've got access to all that stuff, I'm really surprised I haven't. But if you wanted to like color accent a particular grain in some wood, I can see where dyeing that black or whatever would be, a viable option considering how fast it dries, and it doesn't shrink. That's another good thing.
Yeah, I use that a lot on mine, but I never colour it. Never thought of colouring it because I always use it as part of my sort of priming coat, which I'm going to do anyway.
Right.
So some other questions. Is there a guitar or a challenging method that you haven't done yet that you want to try and incorporate in a future build?
Absolutely. I've got thousands of ideas. Some of them I write down, some of them I let flee to the guitar gods, But yeah, I've got all kind of crazy shapes I want to try, neck profiles, scale lengths, headstock designs, all kind of crazy stuff, inlays, whatever, I'll just see where this takes me. I know you guys probably feel the same way. I know you do, Scott.
Yeah, if I'd gotten that question, I'd go, yeah, I have no idea what they are yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to do the same thing twice. That's the magic answer, I think. I don't want to do the same thing twice.
Yes. That's why 2 seconds into the first thought of making it a business, it immediately went away because I don't want some Nimrod coming to me and, I want to tell you. Well, then go to Guitar Center.
Well, I do want to make it a business, but I don't want to build for a customer. I want to build for me. If someone happens to want a guitar from me, I'll sell it to them. That's pretty much the limit of where I'll draw that line. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like the last 3 bills I've had were commissions, but in each of those cases, I mean, one of them, the only information I got was she likes turquoise.
Yeah.
I mean, and the current the GGBO build, his favorite color is purple. That is my one and only requirement.
Well, you can deal with that, man. If it's a color issue, that's not that big of a deal.
Yeah. Well, you give me some, some simple restraints, and then I still have free reign to build what I want to build, and incorporate something like that. I never would have thought to go, pink to purple, and this is going to be amazing when I finally get it dyed.
Oh, yeah, it looks great.
That one little requirement was awesome because I never would have thought of it, but I still have, free creative reign to do what I want to do.
Which is the requirement, that is what it is all about. That's why I think everyone does this that's really into this like we all are.
Yeah.
It's that creative freedom,
Yeah. I just need something to finance the next build. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm quite different because I really enjoy working with someone else who comes up with an idea, but they don't know how to make it. And I've got to
because you're an
help
artist.
them work out what it might look like, how we can build it. Because often people just give me a few words, and they realize they don't really know what they mean. And I've got to tease it out of them, and I quite enjoy that. But I couldn't do it without my own things going on in the background. But it does mean that I've got a couple of guitars at the moment that I've been working on for 3 years that I've never finished because they're just there when I get a bit of my own time to do.
25 years as a programmer, I am exceptionally used to people not knowing what they're asking for.
28 years as a dad, I'm absolutely down with that philosophy.
Well, I mean, people think they know what they want, and it comes time to actually articulate it, and they
I know.
doesn't
They
work.
don't possess the mental capacity to relay their thoughts to you.
Most people never put that much thought into the process.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Well, Daniel's back on yours, man. I think you kind of fall a little on the outer fray of this because the things you do is way beyond guitar building. I mean, the things you incorporate into a build is sculpture, is color, it's all the same things that are required to build a guitar, but it's a whole different style of art that you do.
Well,
it just happens to have strings on it.
I come from a background as a sculptor, and what I like is what you've all said about the amount of skills that go into guitar building, how there's so much that we might all know a certain lot of skills for guitar building, but there's a whole other lot of skills that are different. That's why I love the community and watching the videos and stuff. And I no way like to ever use a word luthier around myself or think about that I've got any knowledge of proper woodworking, because especially talking to you three, I don't have that wood knowledge that you have. I've definitely come from it from sculpting, and a lot of the sculpting I do is with resins and things like that, and it is totally different. And I work with clients for totally different reasons. So, yeah.
That's what makes this all interesting. If we all did the same thing, man, the world would be a boring place,
If I could pick my clients, if you can get a good client that has some interesting ideas rather than somebody that, well, I want a telly, but I want everything on it.
Yeah.
Because I suspect guitar people are weird. Bassists seem really open to, different things, different shapes, all kinds of things. Guitar people tend to be Les Paul,
Strat,
or and any variation from that, they freak out and throw hissy fits. They're weird.
I think that I've given that so much thought, what you just said right there. And I think as a guitar player, thinking back to when I was young, especially, I kind of cut my musical teeth in the 80s, regretfully, or happily. I don't know which yet. But we all had these guitar heroes growing up, and the guitars that they play, I still find myself gravitating towards that style of guitar, even though I'm trying to break that thought cycle in my head because I don't want to build charbels,
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what made me a Strat guy, is that.
The Strat shape informed so many different guitars. But yeah, Strat and LP are most of what people look at as an iconic look. Telly, I always thought was more of an iconic sound.
Yeah, I agree.
But you get in the building and you realize everything about Fender's construction is just the cheapest, shittiest way to do it, generally.
Yeah, well, it's all parallel planes. I think that's what the key to the Fender design is. Everything is parallel.
Yeah.
I've had a few player series guitars come through recently to do either paint jobs or setups on, and they're like the mid-range Fender guitars, and I'm very much surprised by how cheaply made they are when you start looking under the surface of them.
I've got a Fender Strat. You know, as a late teen, that was what I flipped burgers at McDonald's for, to save up to buy an authentic American. You know, I wanted a made in America one, genuine Strat, and I saved for ages and bought one. And I love it. Like, that's, if I can only have one guitar, that would be it. But even like after making a few, and you check alignment of fret markers, and you start looking at in detail. I thought, I'm going to have a look at the Strat, and I look at the alignment of the fret markers, and they're not straight in the middle of the two middle strings. And you look at the bridge placement and where it sits, and it's like, man, this is a
even the made in the U.S. ones are not up to snuff. If you can't get a Fender custom shop, and even then, you still have to be really careful. If you can't get a Fender custom shop guitar that's actually commissioned for a build from Fender by you, you're not going to get a guitar really you want. It's just, you got to build it. I'll never buy another guitar.
Well, when your focus is pushing out units, I mean, that's going to happen.
Yeah,
that's right.
I know. I saw a comment. Someone asked what all their day jobs are. And I've said before, I'm a secondary school teacher. So we've got, obviously a music department. I'm not a music teacher or a woodwork teacher for that matter. But I know when the guitars that the music department have had, occasionally if something goes wrong or it needs set up, then I'll take it home and fix it or have a go. And there was a Squire Strat, and the block kept rubbing like on the inside of the body. So I took it home and took it apart and had a look, and just nothing lined up. Like I was actually, quite shocked that the way it was put together, the trem block was rubbing on the side of the body. And there was a few other little things that when I looked on the inside, and I basically just had to get a chisel and file the cavity bigger. So it didn't, and even then it still wasn't, things weren't lined up perfectly, but there was no way I was going to take it apart further to do
it's
that.
Good enough. Let it go. No, it's not good enough. That's one thing I swore to myself I would absolutely never say is that's good enough. Because it's not. I'm even having that question enter my mind. Something's wrong. I
don't know. At some point, doing some artwork, especially, but you get into things like this, there's an infinite level of precision that you could go to theoretically, but at some point you always have to say it's good enough.
I know, but I'm talking about my accepted level. Yeah,
I got you. No, I understand what you're saying, but I always feel guilty for saying it's good enough, but at some point, yeah. The question about day jobs I thought was probably a good segue into the day in the life topic. But I have no idea, Todd, what your day job is. What's your day to day? What's your week like?
I mix and sell automotive paint, so I talk to a bunch of paint customers all week. I take their orders, whatever, mix them paint. And I've only done that professionally for about 5 years now. I was a large format printing press operator for 17 years. And then I spent the last 5 years of that career in management. So
I did remember you saying something about that, because the ruler I've got, I don't even know what it's for, but you did.
Yeah. There's a level of craftsmanship when you're involved in printing. I don't know if you guys know anything about it or not, but I ran a big 40-inch press, 10 colors. It's a huge machine. And I printed fine art and all kind of stuff for years. I did that, and I loved it. But it got to a point to where that business is so competitive and got so bare bones on profit that I felt like I got tired of working 16, 18-hour days. So, I walked out of a career and found myself free it's the best feeling I've ever had in my life. I realized at that point what the quality of my life was worth based on my quest for financial stability or success or whatever you want to call it. Now I live a comfortable life within my means that affords me to do whatever the hell I want to do. And that, you know, there's something to be said for that. I think some people can't operate off that philosophy, but I don't need that much to be happy, you know?
Yeah, no, I understand that. Well, I suspect most people that are working in the garage, anytime they feel like, you know, spending 20 minutes in the shop, they can step out there and do it. Do you, you know, get a little bit done every evening, spend most of your time on the weekends? When do you build?
Every night, every weekend. This my, you know, I try not to neglect my family. I watch my wife's signals. You know, if I get those signals, I go back to being a husband for a while.
Yeah.
But for the most part, she knows I've been married for 30 years. You know, my wife knows me intimately. And she understands based on what my attitude's like now versus what it used to be like when I worked all the time. I'm a completely different person at this point. You know, that's where the peace and love thing came from, because that's how I feel inside of me. It's she knows what this has done for me, and she lets me roll with it. So I'm really thankful for it, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was going to ask, because watching your videos, you know, you often say, you know, the day and when you're doing things and what you did the day before. How do you keep the motivation? Is that just you just love it so much that gives you the motivation to do it each night after work? Absolutely.
I can't wait. I mean, like right now, I can't wait to go to work and get this day over with so I can come back home and carve this neck. You know, I've felt that way for over 3 years now, every single day of my life. It's creation, man. I love it. It's, you know, it's like an endless art project, and I can't seem to get enough of it, you know? Yeah. And I'm more capable now of achieving the vision that I have in my head of what I want a guitar to be than I ever have been. And I feel myself continuously learning new skills or getting better at certain things that I know I need to keep throwing myself curveballs. And that's why I don't want to do the same thing twice. You know, at the end of this, which will be the day I lay my head down for the last time, I want to have absorbed as much knowledge and built as much beautiful shit, pardon the French, that I can have, you know, that I can have achieved by that point. That's what I want. Nothing else outside of that matters to me. Everything else is happenstance.
You know, it's kind of funny these days. My only worry or thought about death is, will I have a guitar that's not finished? The number of times that idea has come to me is crazy.
Yes.
What's going to happen to that guitar if it doesn't get finished?
I'll leave explicit instructions for what needs to happen to it.
Yeah, well, I figured, you know, my instructions would be mail this to this person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You finish it.
Yeah. Well, there was a time when I was having to live with my mother for a while, and my shop was in her garage. So at any point, I could just step out and do something, and it was awesome. And I really miss that scenario, because these days I'm in a stupid little 1-bedroom apartment, and my shop is over at Mom's. So yeah, these days I pretty much only get there on the weekends, which kind of sucks, but you know, life does things to you.
It does.
So
well, you know, I imagine you have it in your mind though that it won't be that way forever. You know, I know you've got some plan.
Yeah, I've thought that for, you know, a decade, and I'm 50 now, and maybe if I'm lucky, I got 15 more years left. So yeah, that dream's kind of floating away. But
well, 15 years is, you know, at my age, I just turned 55 last Friday. 15 years, I'll take that. You know, if I can make it another 15 years, what the hell, man?
Yeah.
I've lived the life of 3 ordinary men. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've been all over the place. I lived in a tent on the beach on the North Shore of Oahu. I've lived on a sailboat. I've been all over the place, man. And I'm so glad that I have that as part of my story, because I don't want to be one of these guys. I grew up in a shitty little small town. You know, everybody knows everybody else. I did not want to be stuck with that being the limit of my world. You know what I mean?
Most of us that grow up in a shitty little town, your only thought for 18 years is get out.
Well, I was lucky enough to do that like immediately as soon as I was able to get out, I did. And, you know, all that story before this led to this. So it's all a part of the, all a part of the process. You know, I'm just going to ride this wave all the way to the beach, man. You know, whatever it throws at me, I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
I think
I make a statement on some of my videos that life's too short to be purposely mean or willfully ignorant.
Yeah.
And that pretty much sums up how I feel, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Feel like there's a whole other podcast about your past lives. It sounds incredible.
Oh, no. We can't dig too deep in that.
Well,
I've had some unspeakable fun.
Like a
red. Tell us in after we stop going live then, Todd.
I know, man.
For another hour.
Put it this way, Kool-Aid and live chickens were involved.
So I don't mean to be rude, but I was going to say this has been our longest session yet.
I talk a lot, man.
Lots to talk about.
Great. There were a few other questions, but you've sort of answered them in some ways. They're about where ideas come from and how you keep up the creativity. You sound very infused, spending every night and evening on it, weekend on it.
Yeah, see, that's something I'd love to be able to do. And you know, I've moved my setup into the garage over summer, so I've been in here sort of 6 months now. And part of that was, you know, the house is right there. So yeah, I've probably during the week done a little bit more in here, probably not as much as I'd like to, but often it's just it's not getting out the big, loud, messy tools. It's just the little things that you need to drill a few holes, or you need to make a little jig, or set up some, just something that might take you half an hour you can do at night. And then that means that when I get to the weekend, I can just hit the ground running, and I don't have that hour or two of, working out what I wanted to do and all those things. So I kind of find it's helpful for those, the smaller jobs that then mean the weekend sort of free for really getting stuck into things.
Yeah,
that's kind of what I do too. You know.
Well, my schedule is pretty crazy these days. I mean, I've got the 8 to 5, theoretically 8 to 5 day job, and then I'm doing like 3 hours of jiu-jitsu every evening. So it's basically weekends that I get to do anything.
That's a pretty active schedule there, man. But I've seen some of your posts on both Facebook and mainly on Facebook when it comes to that side of your life. You seem to keep that pretty separated. That's a pretty unique thing to be able to do, I'll have to say. I know you're real into the whole Japanese martial arts, and
well, jiu-jitsu is completely unrelated these days. It's just a totally separate beast. But no, I just stumbled into that years ago, and it just happened to be a way that you can accidentally get great exercise while having a lot of fun. But these days, my coach he's trying to get his thing off the runway, and the more people you have there, the more professional it looks. So every time he's open, I'm there basically just to support him, which again is just the happy side effect of a lot of great exercise, which my cardiologist is appreciative of.
I'm sure he is.
I had a doctor visit the other day, and he's like, so what's your diet like? I was like, tacos and beer. He was like, exercise? I'm like, 3 hours of jiu-jitsu every night, just one on Friday. And he just wide-eyed, he sat there and he said, that's a yes.
I wasn't aware you did every night, Scott. I knew that was one of your hobbies, but yeah, that's pretty impressive every night.
I don't know that it's all that impressive. It's not like or am any good at all, but I don't know. It's good for me. I know that.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, it's got to help with your focus and your mental, whatever. I know we all battle things from day to day, but it seems like that would be really, it's personal time, it's personal space. It's got to help with your state of mind is what I'm getting at.
It is another outlet that gets your mind off of the world where you're trying to choke the shit out of college kids,
Yeah.
That's why when we watch your videos of you sanding, you're so focused. You've got that martial arts focus.
Because I'm trying to kill it.
Zen.
I think maybe we should forget about talking about any great guitar build-off this week because
I think
we're going on.
That's been great.
But it'd be brilliant to get Todd back at some point because obviously you're quite I think you are the person that runs the Facebook group, despite the newsletter recently saying otherwise. But yeah, you're obviously you're on the with Scott on YouTube. You're there on Facebook, seeing all the builds coming in. Must be great having that experience.
Yeah, it's great. But I mean, the Great Guitar Build-Off's become something to me that it was not in the beginning. To me now, it's just another build for me with a GGBO name attached to it. That's how I feel about it. That's unfortunate to some, but that's how I feel. It's just another build.
In a way, I think it has come full circle for me back to what it initially was, even though you couldn't really see it at the time. Primarily, it's just the event gets everybody to build at the same time so we can be aware of each other and see what we're doing. Where without the event, you probably wouldn't go to all these channels and watch what they're doing, today.
Exactly. It's a community building. That's the big important part of the Great Guitar Build-Off, and what it's become to me is so much more about the community than it is what I'm doing personally.
Yeah, but having that timeline gets you, just the fact that there's an event gets you to put out